It's now about 9:30, so the first item on our agenda is SD 1915, preliminary plat for Long Branch subdivision, 28 lots. Nancy?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Apologize, I thought they were a little further down the line.
Yeah, you guys come up here.
A couple of the concerns at this site were the,
I feel like this is a congressional.
this site,
You gotta be sworn in first, so.
let me just say, it's located right next to
I'm a liar, but I
Sedgefield
didn't lie.
and ties into Sedgefield. There are a couple of concerns with it. One concern mentioned by Richard Peterson, who is not here, is that the sewer was a little deep at one location. Here, you want to slide that around?
I think you might have just missed why it was deep.
Okay, well, just work it out with him, and, I think.
What's the issue with Richard Peterson again? What is it?
The sewer was deep in one location.
Okay.
And so he wanted that looked into, and, really, there weren't that many, concerns. I talked to the homeowners association, a couple of things they were concerned about is construction traffic and how that was gonna flow.
We've actually got a note on there that says we'll be barricading at the Sedgefield and the construction entrance will be off 44.
Okay, so that's what they wanted.
Yeah, that's all.
Is there any
subdivision
reason you
shed.
wouldn't have it
Yeah.
within the site itself coming off of?
Say that again?
Is there any reason you wouldn't have it?
That's what they just said,
Coming
Nancy.
off of Twin
All
Beach.
construction will come off of
Right.
44.
Okay, well.
There's a note in there.
Okay,
that we-
that's fine, that's what they
No.
wanted. The second thing is a fence. There were 3 lots backing up to one of the lots in Sedgefield, and they were hoping to get a fence at those locations.
Duly noted.
Duly noted, thank you. Let's see, what else? We did have on natural features, we've had some people call regarding gopher tours. We just want y'all to check that and provide some sort of recommendation, whether it's they or there, you know, whether it's biological specialist or, so that was one issue. And there's a lot of water moving through there. I think Eric was asked for a flood study.
Yeah,
We actually included in our drainage.
Is it in there? I
our
just-
drainage couch.
I just want to make sure, that area does not show up on the FEMA flood maps, but that was because it was not included in the flood study parameters of the new maps. You know, for years, and there are folks to the, both east, west, and north of this property that have had flooding and major drainage comments for years. And I just want to make sure, I know looking at the plat, especially the lots that are on the west side of the road on that plat, they drop real heavy from front to back. I think it was around 10 feet in elevation from front to back. So that means those lots are going to back up to that area where all that water carries. And I just want to make sure we're good. I don't know, you know, finished floor elevations. They finalized the adoption of the 2018 codes last night. They'll go effective for building permits received after April 1st. And there are going to be mandatory floor elevations that are going to be required if there is not a specified FFE on the plat. So there's going to be, they have to be 15 inches above the highest grade within the building footprint. They have to be 2 steps up, minimum. So,
And Eric, if it gives you any more, one of the things, and I showed this to Nancy and discussed it with her, the center line of Twin Beach Road downstream is like 73 feet of elevation, and then when you go into the lots that are on that west side and backtrack to the rear building setback, those elevations are considerably higher than that.
Okay.
You know, 2 or 3 or 4 feet. Plus, even if they're pond overtops, you know, that the controlling factor is going to be Twin Beach, meaning that if, you know, you're not going to back water up, it's going
Right.
to, and I don't know if Twin Beach has ever overtopped to that location. I imagine it may have. It
has a little further down at the outfall under the Fairfield Pond, right there where Cowpen Creek goes through. That was actually redone by the county 10 years ago. I think it was after the April or the 2005 floods, because it completely overtopped right there.
Well,
So,
we actually looked at the we calculated the 100-year flow.
You did?
I looked at
Okay,
it, And
okay.
then we got the county's flow
Okay.
that they use for the culverts, and
Gotcha.
we're out of that.
Okay.
That's fine. I just wanted to
And that's
make
it.
sure, because, okay, good deal. There's just, we've had comments from neighboring property owners for years, and I just want to make sure we're good.
And I think you needed a signature on the drainage
Okay.
calculations so that we could,
Nancy, are they meeting the green space standards, the new green space standards?
they submitted.
Did I see a plan where this was behind lots? Because I don't think that's gonna meet it if it's behind lots. Is that right? Did I see something that you sent? Somebody sent me something. I don't recall, maybe a couple
Some
of
of
days
it
ago.
is behind some of the
All right,
lots, it's the
so-
lake.
All right, so
They're
we'll need to give
providing
you,
26%.
but the location is the most important thing for me.
Okay.
Um,
Here you go. Wayne.
Yeah, thank you.
You've got two areas that front streets, and then they're connected around the lake.
And their requirement was 15% green space, and they're actually providing 26.
Okay. We're going to also provide, so we have the new standards. We're also going to provide a guide to help kind of visualize what we're trying to convey. So, so we'll be sure and get that to you guys as well. Okay.
I think that's it.
All right, anybody any questions?
Well, just two things I talked with Nancy about, and I hope she's conveyed that. Your entrance road is pretty much a straight shot into Sedgefield.
Yes.
And I know you have a stub out to the east, looking at incorporating some kind of traffic calming in there, because that's about a 1,300-foot.
Yeah, we're gonna put some speed tables.
Okay. The other thing, I don't know if it got conveyed, and I know trees are always a tough thing, especially when you're building roads, but is there any options to look at preservations of those trees at the north end where the new road connects to the existing road?
No.
There's just not any.
No, I met Paul Merchant out there. We looked at them. If we
Okay.
try to go around them or anything, we're gonna get into the trees on the side.
Okay.
And actually, the cluster that's there, there's only one in there that's got any size, and it's not all that big.
So
But you got to
the,
say, instead of saving the ones in the road, if you do that, you're gonna take out more trees on the.
The one on the one
Better
on
trees?
the east side is a 50-inch.
okay,
we
so
don't
that
wanna
one's
get-
going to be preserved.
We don't want to get over
Okay,
in that.
I got you.
So we took
Okay.
the ones out in the middle of the road.
Well, that was one of the things that wasn't real clear and everything. Well, good, okay.
I also requested the tree preservation buffer along the back of those lots, and a note on the plat that you had mentioned, whether they were disease dying or termite filled. Did y'all have any issues with that?
On the
Miss-
north
so-
line, I don't think so.
Our intent is to stay out of them,
Okay.
so I don't.
I think same, if you recall on that phase that's on the north side of Firethorn, y'all added some language that, because that fence line had those trees on it, and those just, the significant trees are just being preserved. And the nice thing is that most of them would lay within the easement and the setback line anyway, so it's not like anything would be built there. So-
Yeah, except for the one lot, they're actually in a common area now.
Okay,
If there was any way to place, if we have trees in the back of the lot, having an easement across it is wholly ineffective. And during my career, homeowners don't know that. They go cut them and they don't know any better because they don't go look at the plats. If there's any way we can put that in the common area, I think the homeowner association takes much better care of the trees just because it's on separate property. So I don't know if it's possible or not. I would strongly urge you guys to maybe put, if there's trees to be protected that we care about, put those in common area, because then it belongs to someone else and it's not on the back of a lot. Because I can tell you invariably, 5 to 10 years from now, someone's gonna go out there and gonna buy the house, not know it, and they're gonna cut the trees down.
I don't think we have lot depth for that, do we?
Well, these are already in a common area,
Yeah.
so it's just lot 14.
The small, the ones back here.
Yeah. So just something to consider. I mean, that's
Would,
just my
uh,
recommendation.
and Wayne, but in defense, where this fence line is, it's just a natural back of the lot kind of arrangement. I mean, it's hard, it would be, and you wouldn't want to put it in a common area because it may become a no man's land, and you don't want that. You want homeowners to care for areas as part of their backyard. I think as long as we have the documentation that says that there's a tree preservation zone here, meaning that if, and this is always a big if the homeowner requests to get a permit to remove a tree, and then we look at the fact that that tree exists and we can't grant the permit, at least we put a protection in. Doesn't mean the homeowner may just not have the tree cut down and never ask whether he could or should or whatever, but I think that's at least a reasonable protection that we install as part of the recorded plat, and we just move on the
Sure.
best we can with it. So.
But just so we're clear, so the entrance road, the trees there are not as quality and of a size of the ones on the side that we'll be protecting rather than going around the ones in the middle.
Right. Again, I met Paul out
Yeah,
there.
okay.
I'm just gonna relay that to you guys. I don't know if, you know, what's going on.
He did. I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion, for that easement, if that is how y'all decide to do that with the trees, can we make sure we show that easement and not just make it a note? Because I know in the building department,
Yes.
that's gonna be,
Yeah, my concern is, and I understand what Richard is saying, my concern is if someone calls us and says, we have a tree on a residentially zoned piece of property we want to take down, they don't have to get a permit. They are exempt from the tree protection ordinance. So if they call us, that's going to be the automatic response is, okay, you're residentially zoned, you're not subject to the tree ordinance. If it's on your property, you can take it down. And so that's from, like he said, trying to be able to at least make sure that folks know that. It would help on the, yeah.
That's why I had them.
In fact, can you put the mic, because we're spinning.
That's why I had it as a tree buffer and also as a added note that, because Richard wanted specific determination. So I had them pleased to put both of those on there.
And not trying to make it
'Cause we-
difficult for y'all. We've had issues where folks have done that. We had it happen on a commercial property once, and they came in, they didn't get a tree permit, they just went in and said, we're undercutting when we show up, and there's 24 20-inch trees that are gone. So we just try to mistake proof it as best we can.
but if it's shown as like, if you actually
If
show
it's-
it on the
yeah.
plat, then that's a lot easier to see because the surveyors.
That's correct. When they
y'all
come
go
in
back,
for a building
you're gonna see
permit,
that a lot better.
that's gonna
than-
show up on
a lot of
their
times those-
survey.
If it's just a note, then
Yes.
it'll be missed sometimes.
Please.
So.
Okay, any more questions? Anybody else? Okay, all right, thanks, guys, appreciate it. All right, moving to B on the agenda is SD 1916. This is a request from Roberts Brothers for MOP, and Buford, this is yours?
This is mine, so Mr. Smith is coming to the table right now. And this is a 9-unit multiple occupancy project, and it fronts upon State Highway 181 on the west side of 181. It is south of where Highway 104 and Highway 181 intersect. The property's unzoned but falls within the city's planning jurisdiction. So the number of units triggers the requirement for a multiple occupancy project, which is a component of the subdivision regulations. And so, Larry, most of the comments are fairly routine and straightforward. I think the main pressing issues would be the sewer connection, either furnishing gravity sewer or going through the process to request low-pressure sewer. The green space, I think the green space is one of the other issues. And then I think you have LID techniques. It's just simply a matter of identifying them. And then so I think those are the primary issues, and we're certainly happy to answer questions.
Yes, I've actually got a lot of questions as I go through this. So I'm just going to start flipping through the report.
Sure, and Larry, you're welcome to give me a page number so I can match up with you.
Yep. Page 1 will comply. Page 2, that's just standard. Page 3 is where I need to try to figure out where you're coming from on that comment, and then make sure that what you're asking is really even applicable to an MOP process. First thing is requesting the 20-foot setbacks, which we provided. When we switched, originally we weren't coming in for an MOP. We were going to keep the unit numbers down, and then some possible future tenants came in. We figured we better go ahead and hit it now, and luckily we did, because originally we didn't have 20 feet setback. We moved the building to comply with that 20-foot setback, but you're asking for a replat to show 20-foot setbacks, and I don't know that you necessarily have to replat the property to enforce a 20-foot setback. It's just like a zoning setback and anything else. And so my concern would be we replat this showing a 20-foot setback, and all developments change over time. Somebody comes and buys the property from Kane, and they put a single-use building on there where they don't have a 20-foot requirement. Why would we replat it when it's enforceable just like any zoning setback is, whether it's shown on a plat or not?
And I think, and the best answer for that, Larry, is that in addition to the subdivision regulation requirement, we also have another issue with possible utilities having to be brought onto the site onto private property, and so that also would reflect the drainage and utility easements as well, and have them reflected on there as well.
All right, and that jumps into my next comment on that same one. You're referencing sections that are not applicable to MOPs. If you read the MOP language, they gives you specific instances where the subdivision regulations are applicable. The section on easements, utility easements, is not part of the MOP process.
Okay.
So that is only if we are going to be bringing utilities on site that we need to grant an easement, but it's not the easements per the definition. If you look at the sections that are applicable per the MOP is Article 5, Section F specifically, that's stormwater regulations.
Okay.
Right before that is utility easements. That's not applicable because it's not specifically listed here.
Okay. Like I said, Larry, if I got carried away, with that and need to make an amendment, I certainly will.
Okay, and if we need to bring utility easements to get utilities on a property, obviously we're going to give them utility easements. But a replat's not the only way to grant an easement, and so I don't want to create a replat and put setbacks on a piece of property that are already enforceable somewhere else. That's all I'm saying. If we need to grant easements to Richard to get the utilities here, we'll do that.
And I think what Larry's saying is that the MOP has a site plan. So if the MOP is to be approved, the site plan will demonstrate the 20-foot setback. You don't have to replat the property to do that because we will judge the MOP by the site plan. The other thing is that, yes, if there is a portion of the utilities to come in that will be publicly maintained, then they will be forced to grant a sufficient easement to capture that portion that's going to be maintained. And that really doesn't require a replat because that can be done by a simple recorded instrument.
Yeah,
So,
correct.
Yeah, and like I said, Larry, I would rather be more conservative. I'd rather be more conservative. We've had some issues that there's no need to discuss here on other MOPs where a routine replat would have resolved some issues if we had caught it at the MOP stage. So maybe that's probably why I was a little bit trigger happy on that, but understood.
All right, so let's see. The next one's talking about utilities, so we'll get to, actually, no, there it is, the comments. On this project's been kind of going on for almost a year now on my end. So back in June is when I originally met with Richard Peterson to discuss this, and we started with email correspondences, then I actually went and sat in his office. And he showed me a plan, which is a plan that's attached back in here with what he would love to do is bring in sewer down via easements down 181 to help. Is it McElmurray? Who's down? McElmurray. Yeah. And our biggest concern there was his timing and how that would be funded. And now we're almost a year later and nothing's moved forward on that. That was my concern to him then. I discussed with him then the possibility of low pressure through some of the easements that attached to the neighborhood. And his response, and I have it in the emails, that he didn't want to look at any utility force main extensions at that time. And so since that email, Baldwin County Sewer has gotten an agreement with a couple of the lots there to bring sewer over to them, and that's the utility availability letter that we provided. That's the low-pressure grinder pumps that we show on our drawings. And so,
but still with the low pressure, still have to go through the justification process.
Right.
So that's just
Correct.
a matter of filling out the justification process. That's the only way we can do it in the subregs.
okay.
Yeah, so basically the standard specifications for constructing water and sewer, that application that was in there, include that in your review response where you're formally requesting the approval of low pressure sewer for the development.
Okay. So even though we're not asking Fairhope Utilities to provide low pressure, like any of these other subdivisions that are using Baldwin County Sewer, they have to submit that?
Because we have to comply with the subdivision regulations.
Okay. I'm just making sure I understand that. So
Correct.
any low pressure, no matter if it's Baldwin County or 100 lot subdivision, they have to submit that even if they're using Baldwin County Sewer.
Yes.
Got it. never been asked that one before, but we will comply. All right. The next one, page 4, that's just, I provide a letter stating since they're in the process of changing out from a 6-inch to a 12-inch main, if we could just do the fire flow after, and y'all said that sounds fine.
Yeah, Richard was agreeable.
Yeah. We'll get the landscape architect to note the tree save and the height. And then the green space, we'll update the table to include the new green space requirements. Page 6, that's fine. You just want as-built of phase 1?
Yes, sir. Yeah, that is, and what we've been doing, Larry, is on MOPs. That is basically our means of closeout.
That's your final plat?
Yeah, that basically takes the place of a final plat.
Yeah. Page 8, we've already discussed that ad nauseum. That's about a replat. Page 11, again, replat.
Yeah.
And on page 12, I'm assuming just the spacing. But if we place a fire hydrant right there at the right-of-way off the new 12-inch main, I don't think we need to come into the site. But if we do y'all really want it to be a public fire hydrant, or would it be backflowed and a hydrant on the site? I mean,
Well, that's probably, and I don't see Richard Peterson here today, that would be a question we can, I'll be happy to get some more clarification on that with Richard.
okay.
And will having a hydrant on the state right away at the frontage, will that get you where you need to be as far as distances to everything that you need?
I need to check.
Okay.
It's close to 450.
Okay.
But-
I mean, I think preferably it would be nice to keep it on the right of way.
Yeah,
I mean,
I do
that's
too.
just, from a cost standpoint and everything else. And Eric, did we have a discussion, is there sprinkling going to be involved in these buildings?
Depends on the buildings, depends on the occupancy classifications of the buildings, so we don't know for sure yet. It kind of depends on what we're doing.
And Eric and Larry and Richard, Sandy Garber clarified for me that his review was that it would not have to be sprinkled.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he had that, and I think I have that noted in here, Larry. If it's not, I can reflect it in an amendment. As far as on the right-of-way versus on-site, we can also ask Sandy to look at that again to determine, if it's on the right-of-way, can the firefighting to the furthest extent of the property be accomplished via hose lay to
Yeah.
that hydrant? And I'm happy to get some clarification on that.
Yeah, if you would, it'd make life for all of us a lot easier.
Sure.
Okay. We've already spoke about the LID, so we'll clarify which ones we're utilizing there.
Yeah, I think you've already got that covered. It's
Yeah.
just to identify it.
Identifying it. Green space, first part's okay. Okay. On page 14, midway through, spent a lot of time trying to find the new green space ordinance that was approved, and I think I found it in the minutes somewhere. But but the copy I have is that's something else. Yeah, that's it.
That's it.
But section E doesn't match up to what's on there. It was struck through. Did that change?
Larry, I tell you what, the green space requirements that are as advertised in the subdivision regulations that are published right now that can be downloaded, every time that I've gone there, it's still the previous version.
Yeah.
So if you're in compliance with what is publicly advertised, if you're in compliance with what's on there, the 10% that it showed.
No. No, once that's adopted, it's adopted.
Yeah, yeah.
And whether you get a copy of it, I don't know. We'll get you a copy.
No, this. But what I'm saying is on here, he's saying that the
What's
green
in
space
His doesn't match.
what's in Buford's doesn't match the current adopted one,
Okay.
and so.
Yeah, when it's adopted, it's adopted.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so I just want to make sure this that I got off y'all's website
Okay.
is the current one, because on here it says green space shall not be located adjacent to collector or arterial road, and this one that was scratched from the verbiage. and it says green space should be provided for a variety of activities that accommodate a range of age groups, including play areas for children. So if that one's the current one, then
Okay.
this note is not applicable.
Okay, so that would be Article 5, Section C4?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, okay. I'm happy to make an amended comment on that.
Okay.
And that's the great thing of why we have this meeting with the volume of regulations we go through. This is the great time to address those types of things.
Okay, and then the following is if we need a green space hardship, but I think if article, if the previous comment goes away on section E that you had bolded, then I think we're gonna be fine on green space because we have the highway construction setback, which gives us a large amount of green space, but if that gets taken away by that, then,
You can't be punished for that.
yeah.
Not of your choosing.
Article 6, page 16, page 17, no big deal. 18, we'll amend the drainage narrative to say how we're not adversely affecting state right-of-way 181. More replat stuff. I think that's about it. Let me just make sure. The rest is all LID. Talking about the LIDs. I really appreciate your checklist, but they're so long.
Larry, I appreciate the comments, and I'm glad you and all of our engineers enjoy it. I am not the author of the subdivision regulations.
All right, so then we get back to the sewer and the fire hydrant stuff. So we'll have to get that clarified through Richard. We'll get the sewer request in for the low pressure via Baldwin County Sewer. And I think that will summarize this one.
All right, very good, Larry.
Anybody have any questions of Larry?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I always appreciate a site plan that it has exclusive ingress and egress to a state right-of-way and drains to the state right-of-way. It makes my life a little easier.
Yeah.
As 181 is redeveloped, will your ingress and egress be a right-in, right-out only, or will you have a corresponding cut-through? Do you know?
No, our no, they're. I have to go back and look at the overall plans.
Okay.
I believe ours were in the plan. You have my plans right there.
Yes.
We've got their plans grayed in. There's a median there.
Oh, there is a median cut? Okay.
No, it's not a median
No,
cut.
so
There's a
you'll be,
median.
so when they get through, your entrance will be a right-in, right-out only?
I believe so.
Okay, that's what it, and have y'all got your drainage and your access permit taken care of? Good.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got our LDOT permit, and they're working with us to allow our final design to come in at the back end of their road widening project. So they've approved it, and we'll be utilizing. Yeah, there's a median.
Okay.
We'll be utilizing a temporary construction easement until they're done.
Okay.
Unless Ammons and Blackman spills the whole thing.
That'd be nice. I think they are everybody else's.
Yeah. All right.
Richard, anything else?
No, that was it.
Anybody else? Okay. All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen. Yes. It's
All right, next item is C, SD 1917. This is a two-lot minor subdivision. Buford?
Yes, and this is a case, Mike Jeffries couldn't be with us today, and this was one of his cases. And when Mike asked me to discuss it with the applicant, his comments are very, very, very brief and very simple. Is essentially, basically, what's labeled as Lot 1 and Lot 2 on your preliminary plat is essentially just relabel them Lot 1A and 1B. Is basically the only comment he had. Make the corrections to that plat.
And that's it.
And did they verify or pick up the additional water meter? Wasn't that another discussion item?
Yeah, well, we found it, and he's making the adjustment, and
Okay.
we already have our surveyor doing that. And the main thing we want to be sure of is, we know it's a private road, Devoncote Lane is, and so we're actually asking for a waiver, so that we can do it on the, and the reason being, that's how it was originally planned, and then they have the live oak trees along the other side if we did it the other way. So we just want to make sure we're not missing anything coming into it.
And this was widely discussed, and your staff is in favor of the planning commission granting that waiver because of the not only the hardscape of the brick wall that's there and out there on the Taylor Street, as well as those beautiful trees, is that it just makes sense that the lot frontage is to the internal private road. It is improved. It was always intended to be that way, and I don't think you're going to find, I just don't foresee the planning commission having any issue with giving that waiver.
Okay, well, we were going to go the extra step in having our neighbors sign a petition to make sure, but we don't need to do that then?
Well, one thing I told Mike Jeffries is that the planning commission nor the city staff can place a requirement on an entity we don't have jurisdiction over. So if you, as the owners, feel confident that you have the right of ingress and egress for 2 lots on that road, then you move forward at your own risk at that point in time. We cannot give you access to a road that we don't control. So I think it is appropriate that you at least have acknowledgement from the common neighbors that there's no issues with that.
Okay.
But we could not necessarily, they can grant the waiver to have access to frontage to that road, but access is between who owns the road, and that's the property owners.
And they'll be thrilled, actually, because they want a pretty house to be out there, 2 of them, and so they'll love it, but I'll go ahead and just mention it to them.
Very good.
And the derivation from this is that the City of Fairhope subdivision regulations require lots to front upon a paved, publicly maintained road. So whenever we have a situation where we believe, as Mr. Johnson was saying, that you have adequate access and the road is a substantial qualification for it, that you can request a waiver from that requirement. So, but yeah, the feedback from the neighbors is definitely a useful piece of supporting documentation.
Okay, we can do that. Okay, well, thank you, and by the way, the staff there has been fabulous. Emily and Mike have just been wonderful. So
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Okay, moving on to D on the agenda. This is SD 1918. This is a 3-lot minor subdivision. Buford?
And good morning once again. And so Mr. Smith is coming back to the podium. And
I don't have any zingers this time for you, though.
No.
It's the podium.
For you, so don't worry.
And Larry, I'll tell you what, if you'd like, we can do just like we did last time. If you want to start with the review comments and just tell me a page number and we'll follow along with you.
Well, it's so funny. I left all my stuff up here, knowing I'd be right back. I don't have it. Like I said, I don't have as much to go through, and the majority of the issues are utilities. So it looks like I'll be following up with Richard on that. Number 3 is the utility. We had requested some information on fire flow, and haven't gotten a response on that yet. So whether or not they have any current data or if I needed to flow the hydrant.
Okay.
We made that request a few times and just waiting to hear. And so we can flow it if we need to, or if he wants to use some of the existing data that they have on file, because they've kind of switched. Used to, they always required us to flow it, and now they've been trying to use existing data because I guess neighbors were complaining. I don't know.
Okay, possibly just simply the fact that you have to go and flow test a fire hydrant in the field.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so either one, we're willing to do it. We just need to know what he wants us to do so we can get it scheduled.
Okay.
That's next one's okay. Street light. Please reflect the site density. No big deal. Later comments on lots. All right. Page number 5. I believe my client or some of their representatives have probably met with y'all or Wayne in the past on this. Their desire is to not pave the cul-de-sac, and so it looks like we need to seek the waiver route for that. we'll just go ahead and jump ahead. I know somewhere in here there's some next comments talking about drainage issues. If y'all can enlighten me on what the drainage issues are, so I know what to look for.
Well, I can tell you, and this kind of historically goes back, I know at least 4 or 5 years. I remember when Jennifer Fiddler was here, she had a lot of discussions with folks that are on the south side, kind of downhill. Because that's an unpaved area, the way that it drains, it kind of, water really comes rushing down that unpaved area down to the lower part, and they had put in at one point a berm
Give me the
or
plat.
a gravel berm of some kind to try to deflect and slow that down. And that has kind of held on as it is with it not being developed. But I also, the neighbors that have, the southern neighbors that have these drainage issues, I probably hear from them about every 3-4 months, just randomly for the last 3 or 4 years, asking, is anything going on with this property? Because they are continuing in heavy rains to experience a lot of water off that property. So I just want to make sure that, you know, we're looking at what we need to do, if it's possible to do some swales or some berms or something along that south property line, because you're right there at the bay. Let's kick that water out towards the bay and try to keep it from leaving, and or as much as possible from leaving and going on that south property. That would be very welcome for them on that.
Do you know which one I'm assuming by your description we're talking about this property here.
Believe
It'd be the only one that would accept Gilbert.
Yes.
Or Guybert.
G-Bear.
G-Bear.
Yes.
It's French.
And Larry, let me,
Louisiana.
you know, it's funny, Mr. Chasen sat down with Wayne and I to discuss this property and about options and things of that nature, and frankly, I may have turned around that cul-de-sac one time, but I was unaware of this, and actually, Wayne and I went out to look at it, just to lay eyes on it after the meeting with Chasen. It was amazing. We were literally held hostage by about 2 hours, and we were told of all of the wrongs that had been put upon. This was concerning Davis Drive, and I'm just going to tell you, if you go to the litigation and things with this, it's not good. And then it's funny. Then I have been drug out by Guy Bear and the neighbor who lives in the original Davis house, and you know, the tragedies they have faced and everything else, and so I'm just saying there's a lot of awareness in this area, yes. and there's a lot of challenges, and I think that, you know, one of the issues we have is that even though I don't know, I cannot tell you that we cannot find anything in any documents of the city about the nature of this right-of-way. And Davis Drive, there's a lot of litigation and a lot of things of that nature, but it's not 30 foot. And if you believe the local legend there, it's 2 15-foot easements that are side by side with a threat. If one person steps by across the 15 foot, they will be arrested and trialed. And we were nearly arrested and accused of violating laws by just pulling down a road to look at it. So those are the concerns that I have, is that one, when we get to that public is a first standard, and then improved is the next standard. And I don't know how that, I have no nature of the little 30-foot right-of-way that was there. There's a slide reference, but these things got to be clarified and perfected before, you know, this land can be divided per our regulations. That's my concern. And then you have and I'm guarantee you this is a concern I have, is that, as I explained to the neighbors to the south, right now, the lots of records that exist, somebody can buy them and they can do whatever they want that's allowed in zoning to do. They could build the biggest house they wanted to if it's residential and everything else, and we have very little requirements to put on them. But as soon as there's a requirement for infrastructure improvements, whether it's through utilities or roadways or a combination of both, we have to treat it like a major subdivision, and thus drainage does come into play. And there is no doubt that the two houses immediately to the south have had massive slope failures on their bluff line, and even to the point where what little repairs were done after the 14 floods are not holding up real well. And granted, they are contributing to it, because every bit of the water off of their driveways and their rooftops also is flowing over that bluff. But there is evidentiary evidence. There's a lot of water sheeting off this land, as well as possibly what's coming down the south end of North Mobile Street. And those are the concerns that we have, is that it has all the smell and flavor of a litigation that will never end if we don't dot our I's and cross our T's. And that, so those are my concerns, is that do we have adequate access? Some of it can be cured, meaning that this can be formally given as right of way that's part of this, at least re-given, but we can't, we asked the city clerk to find everything she could on Mobile Street in this location, and we really found nothing that produced how that right of way was created, or why the county mapped it the way they did. So, and maybe you have some information you've uncovered.
I haven't seen the full title report yet,
Okay.
so, but I mean, we've got obviously the survey, and it references other plats, but I don't know, how do you give something that all the other documents don't say it belong to you? Talking about the right of way there.
Well, Davis Drive is an interesting thing, and I don't know if the person that held Wayne and I hostage for a couple hours is correct or not, but there's no doubt that he has sued the mess out of the city on a whole bunch of issues all around his property, and that is documented. So, he pretty much told us to get the hell off of his driveway.
Who is that, Richard? Who is that?
Estefan, I think is his name.
Okay.
And the city clerk assisted us as far as the Davis Lane, Davis Drive. It's labeled in both versions. She found some correspondence going back to 2014. And what she was able to definitively put into us in an email was that is definitely the Davis Lane / Davis Drive has definitely not been accepted for maintenance by the city. She was able to clarify that for us.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So in summing, let's please take a good look at the drainage, because, I could go back into the history and things that the city has tried to do kind of ad hoc to help them. Mm-hmm. But this goes all the way back when I came back to the city in September of 12. This was happening then, and it continued on through 14 and all the way up to 15,
So just out of curiosity, and I'm not trying to throw any zingers at anybody on this one, but is that portion, I know you said this section of the cul-de-sac, but do you have any records on who owns that section of Mobile Street? Is it the city? Is it not necessarily the cul-de-sac, but everything leading to the cul-de-sac? Because, I mean, the drainage isn't from this lot. I mean, if you look at this lot, it's everything north of us flowing through the right-of-way, flowing across our lot.
There is no doubt that there is water coming down Mobile Street. Your answer to your question is, at least through the record city clerk, we have not found anything definitive.
Yeah.
I think that anybody could argue prescriptives, because I think the nature of this road has been just like it is today 15 years ago. So, yeah. And it has been treated as public, and yes, there are records that we have put gravel down and graded it and done maintenance on it. But, it's one of those things and that's not uncommon in cities, that you have right-of-ways that are, they don't have the background documents to support what it is. I'm not as worried. The Davis's Lane is the one that I have to worry about the word public, okay? Because I've at least had somebody who said he can prove it's not public, it's private, and okay, and I'll take that at face value. I'm not worried about Mobile Street because it has been treated as public, and I think that prescriptive rights there. Then we have to have discussion about improvements. And I think that even though we put the word pave in there, there is a way to at least go through a waiver process, but that you can do improvements that aren't pavement, but that also keeps the aesthetic and the nature of that section of street intact. I mean, I don't think you make that street better by paving it, but is there an opportunity to address drainage or try to catch some of that drainage and get it somewhere else? That would be, and there may be an opportunity to do it in a private-public partnership with the city to fix that problem, and I'd be all willing to support that. But we just, we got to start the conversation somewhere, and this is kind of the start of that.
So I guess that answers my question. We're talking about handling drainage in the improvements of the right-of-way more than we're talking about sheet flow across the lot. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think if you could keep the product of the right-of-way from not only sheet flow in across the lot that's going to be proposed to be developed, but
Yeah.
also the lot south of it, we address 95% of the problem.
Yeah. Okay.
Can
All
I
right.
ask a question about
Yes, sir. Come on,
the issue of Davis Avenue? If it's private,
Please speak into the mic, please. Sorry. Yes, sir. Please speak in the mic.
if the road is a private road, private to who? It appears that it's that 15 feet to the south of the line that would be Mr. Estefani's and the Gravely's. So 15 feet of that 30 feet is on the Gravely side, and the other 15 feet is on the Estefani side. So why does that make all 30 feet private to either one of those two owners?
Well, and let me say this, that it is, and I think it's exactly that. The north one is claimed to be private for Estefani, and the south 15 is for whoever needs to use it to get to their property accordingly. The whole has never been accepted as a public right-of-way. So meaning that it's not publicly maintained and it's not under public jurisdiction. It is privately possessed by whoever the easement / right-of-way, whatever you want to call it, is associated to for ingress, egress. And, there is a transformer down there set, correct?
Yep, there is.
So
There is.
apparently there is at least an easement to the utility to provide that electrical service thing. But but from a public works city of Fairhope standpoint, there has never been a public dedication and or acceptance of that right of way. So it's private in nature, even though.
And so what would the regulations be as to having a lot created that is accessed by a private easement?
We'd have to get a waiver.
Yeah, because Larry, Mr. Chase and Larry, the subdivision regulations require lots front on a paved, publicly maintained road. Being a pure requirement of the subdivision regulations, that certainly could be, a waiver could be requested, and then the justification for the waiver explained in the request for waiver.
So in one case, we're going to say it is public, but we're going to ask for a waiver not to have to pave it. But in the other case, you're asking for two waivers. You're asking for not to have to pave it and for it to be allowed to be private.
Well, we could never ask for it to be public, because if it is true that only 15 feet of width exists there for ingress and egress, it can't meet any standard of a right-of-way at 15 feet. So that it would have to be a waiver that just allows a isolated lot that is isolated from the nearest public right-of-way to be accessed by a private easement. And again, we would, if that waiver was granted, the city would look at it as just a long driveway, and it's not ours to maintain. It's whoever the property owners that are using it to maintain.
Well, is it worth asking the question as to public versus private, 15 versus 30 or whatever? I mean, if it's not public, and who could close it off? We may have possibly an alternative way to get to that lot. But if we did, then we may not, if we can't use that 15, 30-foot Davis Street, we may want to close it.
Well, and again, I haven't read any easement descriptions, so I don't know if those lots that go down back toward Gayfer, if they have rights to that easement or not. I know there's a house that sure does look like the garage and everything. They pull right off of Davis to get there. I have no knowledge about that. That if just as we talked to the first one, if the waiver is granted, it's up to you or whoever is the developer, owner, whatever, to verify that they have the right to use that. It's not us.
Would it be helpful for us to get some type of legal opinion about about that drive, as far as whether if someone has a claim to it being their private drive, but prescriptively that road has been there for a long time and used by people other than the person claiming that it's their private easement.
Again, I think the one thing is that I think our planning commission should not ever do is approve a subdivision of a lot that does not have clear ingress and egress to a public right of way. So I think that's a standard that's, you know, that there's got to be something that shows us that there is access that gets you from this lot back to the public right of way.
But if the 15 feet on the south side is deemed to be what you said, basically a private long driveway that the city has no responsibility for, what would that be a problem for the planning commission to grant the approval of the creation of that lot with that being its access?
So you'd have to get a waiver to the requirements of frontage and direct access to a paved, publicly maintained road. But again, I think the way that if you sell a lot and it turns out that there's no access, that's problematic. I mean, so, you know.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions? Anybody? Larry? Good. Good, okay.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's yours.
All right, moving to E on the agenda, SD 1919, two-lot minor. Nancy?
Yes. This is right on the corner of Payne meets Laraway. It's a two-lot minor subdivision. There's an existing house at that location. The only, there were a couple concerns, and I hate that Eric just left, but we can talk to him later. He did provide some comments regarding concern of drainage. There's just a lot of water flow in the area, and he didn't give specifics as to what he wanted. He just put notification that it was.
On his notes, he had to leave to take care of an emergency with the department issue. It says a lot of drainage complaints from houses to the north along Merson. Grade drops north to south to this property. There's a drainage easement with an inlet and piping behind the houses that discharge either on or near the property, starting at about 210 Mershon. That was his comments.
Well, I'd be glad to talk about that.
Are you aware of those, Richard?
No, I haven't visited the site yet, so
Well, actually, none of the water from Mershon flows onto this property. There, and I'll give you a little topo you can kind of look
Yeah,
at.
the engineer, because that's the best person to talk to.
There is
Passing the
a
message on.
drainage, for lack of words, gully, behind the houses on Mershon that comes out onto Mershon, north and east of this property, on a 4-lot subdivision that was created. The drain comes down here and then goes on to Mershon and down. This property is over here. I've changed the drainage or the easements to 15 foot, and I pretty much believe that when they build a house on that lot, they'll have to adhere to any drainage for that lot. But there isn't any water coming onto this lot. It's fairly flat. Also brought a topo of the lot, so you can kind of see it does flow from north to south, but it's very gentle at this point. There is an existing fire hydrant across the street from the manhole, right there, and I'll put it on the plat. Those are the only.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not in a flood zone, but.
Right, I'm gonna still get with Richard just on our checklist, but I think
Sure.
everything else.
yeah, I mean,
Most everything.
that's what, when you said that, I mean, I know about Mershon, but yeah, it's not coming through here. I mean,
Yeah.
and Wayne, just so you know, this is one of these exceptions in the old part of Fairhope. These are 1 acre lots. We
Yeah.
don't see that too often, so I'm not
No.
really, you know, the even if you build a 4,000 footprint house, you're only 10% of the site there,
And I
so.
will tell you that we had several calls on this particular site before, over the history of time, because it's been for sale for a long time, or discussion about what's gonna happen from people who are interested in it. They have an option for a 50-foot right-of-way where they could actually put 4 lots. So if there are issues, I think it's better for it to be 2 lots.
Yeah, I was just reading Eric's comment, so I would suggest get with Eric and make sure that everybody's all in agreement with that. Okay, anything else? Any more questions? Okay. No? All right, moving on to, thanks, Seth, appreciate it. F on the agenda, SD 1920, LA Development, final plat for Twin Beach Estates. Buford.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, guys.
Good morning, gentlemen. And so we're discussing a final plat approval for Twin Beach Estates. This development is located on the north side of Twin Beach Road, just west of the intersection of Highway 181. Excuse me, a 72-lot major subdivision. And gentlemen, if you don't mind, I think what we can do is I can just flip through the comments page very quickly. A lot of them are standard routine text edit type comments, but what we can do is hit on some of the noteworthy items. If you look on page 1, so we have a letter of credit. We don't have the agreement, the guarantee agreement that goes along with that, as you would see with if a maintenance bond. So that is a follow-up item that we're needing. And then if you'll flip to page 3, again, those are some routine text edit types of items. Page 4, we do not, the main thing I wanted to note for you on page 4, we do not have storm sewer and sanitary sewer inspection videos required by that section. The other comment on there is fairly routine. Page 5 is a very routine editing type of comment. Page 6, being a little picky here, but it doesn't look like we have a copy of a paid invoice to Baldwin EMC for streetlights. That looked like a quotation from Baldwin EMC. The main thing is that we have documentation that aid to construction's been paid so that Baldwin EMC puts in the streetlights. So being a little picky there to satisfy the requirements. If we flip to page 7, as we talked about earlier, we've got a letter of credit for satisfying maintenance purposes. What we don't have is a performance bond for sidewalk and street tree installation, unless y'all want to go ahead and put them all in, and unless you want to go ahead and physically install them right now. Okay.
No, he's not going to want to do that.
Okay, so we'll have to have that, of course, for bonding those items to be built within the install between the 2-year period. Basically, both comments on that page mirror one another. And then if we go to page 8, basically, you'll see the subdivision regulations are a bit repetitive. And so it references, once again, what we discussed earlier about the guarantee agreement needed with the letter of credit. On page 9, this is a typical comment we have whenever we're dealing with a lift station. And generally what we've been doing, because of the time it takes and the coordination it takes to get a lift station in place, generally what we've done is made a condition of approval of the final plat. It's just simply to set when the warranty period begins on a lift station. And that's basically been, well, that's most likely what will reflect here. That way Jay Whitman's needs are satisfied on the lift station. And then so that way the startup and all that you can coordinate with Jay. Something that we are looking at, same page on page 9 in the middle of the page, something that we are now emphasizing with greater emphasis is placing at least 2 concrete monuments with ferrous cores, preferably in a common area. So that way we know we have those concrete monuments in the development. Not at every quarter, just in 2 locations where we think they'll be protected.
And if I could stop, since we got a professional surveyor, is that a practice that we need to go get away from? How common is it to set monuments anymore?
It's not really common anymore. You know, the county used to require that. You know, my personal opinion about that is that when you designate, you know, in terms of our standards of practice, you know, it dictates in there, you know, what is considered an acceptable manner for monumenting property corners, you know, one of which is, you know, obviously a concrete monument, but for the most part, it's just the 18-inch piece of rebar or ferrous material with a cap on it. You know, if you're going to require the monument, you want to require it such that the cap can be put on it, so it's identified as to who set it, and not the X.
Okay.
But in terms of, you know, what holds more weight out there in that subdivision, that monument's no more valuable in terms of determining property than
any of the other corners out there.
Okay.
So, I mean, you can require it if you want to. I mean, everybody can set a monument. It's not that difficult to do, but it's not, in the effort to try to establish a baseline, if you will, it's not going to do that any more so than any other corner out there. So, yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt my feelings to set a monument. It does take a little bit more time, but if you want it, you want it, you know. But it's not, I don't think you establish anything in greater detail by having 2 monuments versus just having standard corners.
Okay.
I mean, in my opinion, if they're doing their job right, they're tying down enough corners out there to make sure that they're fitting in the puzzle the way they should. So,
Good information. Well, technically it says, ours says right now that every
now
exterior corner.
I would ask that we not have to do that.
No, that's, well, we
Ask for 2. Ask for 2 of them.
Because I mean, that gets costly and then time, consuming, and then, what happens most times, especially on front corners, is we'll set them, and then about every couple of lots or so, EMC will come drop their
An outrigger on a truck.
No, they drop the pedestal of the transformer on the little concrete pad or fiberglass pad. They wind up on top of the corner. So then next thing you know, you got a monument in the way and people are complaining, and.
Well, and I was trying to think, if like you have a good corner at a common area, so theoretically nobody's building a house, and nobody's setting a transformer, and there's a concrete monument, and we jump ahead 25 years in the future, and somebody needs to, piece of property is being sold, there's got to be a lot survey done, that if that surveyor who gets that thing says, well, concrete monument place, well, I know at least this is the first place I'm gonna look to tie to a corner to work my way back, because I will tell you, I moved in a house 3 years after the subdivision was platted, and I was so happy I found 3 of 4 pins, okay?
Right.
And then my back door neighbor decided to put a fence in, so I cleared the dirt around the pin and painted all of them pink with real bright fluorescent paint. And he thanked me greatly. He says, I pulled those out and put the corner post right there with my fence, and so now I only got 1 left. So I know how that works. So,
And so, but what happens there too, though, is, without getting lengthy and, explanation, is each one of those lots in there are created at the same time. And so your effort to try to be able to go back and say, okay, here's a hard, solid baseline that we can work in and always build back, because there is no like junior, senior right for this lot versus that lot versus the next. I mean, you really are confined within the limits of the subdivision there, and you have to go back. And so the theory is great, because it is always easier to go back and find that, okay, here's the deal. But the hope is that the guy on the other side of the subdivision that's surveying actually comes over here, ties into those, but they don't. And so then you wind up maybe 20 years from now, these 5 lots agree in this little block, and then there's a little bit of variation here and there and whatever. So the theory is great. If you wanted to really make it better, when it comes down to that is, you could go in there and say, well, I want to, I'd rather you reference me a coordinate at every corner of a block, or, you know what I mean? Something like that, where you define it a little better. But again, if your surveyors are doing their jobs like they're supposed to, then you should be able to recreate it. So,
All right.
we're gonna do whatever y'all tell us to do anyway.
And then, gentlemen, I appreciate that, Ursula, I appreciate that. My final comment, very briefly here, is that on the various test reports, on other projects, Geocon typically gives us a cover letter where their engineer will sign and stamp it. And I'm asking for that here because then there is no doubt that we have met the requirements of the subdivision regulations as well as the city muni code requirements. You have that, then we are good to go. And so that's what I'm asking for here. And then the last page, the last comment, is basically just a reiteration of what you've already seen. So, gentlemen, we are happy to answer questions, us, staff, on anything we have in here.
Yeah, I think obviously there's nothing in here that we're going to pick. We're going to get this to you. It's my understanding that the video was accomplished and I should be able to get that to you here shortly.
Okay. It's my job to watch those things.
This was the
That's exciting.
estimate that.
We'll
that
send you a
that
bag
was
of
built
popcorn
on.
with it.
I don't know if you want that, or you want me to provide the other documentation that goes along with. That's what Matt used to go get his letter of credit for that.
Okay, so yeah, this is one of the supporting documents I need, so thank you for that.
And we'll get you the other,
We'll get the agreement.
the agreements.
Yeah, the rest of it's just pretty standard stuff. Now, gentlemen, I have, because I wanted to have this meeting before we did it, I haven't asked any staff to go and make their physical examinations in the field. But you know, if I have assurance of y'all that all these supporting documents are on their way and we'll have them in sufficient time, we'll kick that off next week. What I've been trying as an experiment is I go and basically conduct I'll do my own by myself. Then I and Eric Cortinas will go and check through it, and then I'll let Jay and Arthur and the various other staff look at it on their own time. Let them give their comments to me, which I'll provide, if needed, as a follow-up letter to you. Because I realize right now we may not have street signs and street signs and reflectors for fire hydrants and those sorts of things. So we'll give you a separate correspondence on that sometime next week.
And Doug, have you already kind of punched it out with the general contractor? I mean, have you walked it and kind of given your notes of what you found that you wanted to be corrected or changed or revised, or where are we at in that?
Clay and I discussed this week that we would get out there early next week.
Okay.
And they still had some things that were critical to discharge points and things like that, that they were supposed to be wrapping up this week. We got a little weather that was an issue, so we're going to ride by on the way back to kind of check that out. But Clay and I are going to do that first thing next week, do our own walkthrough, and then we can.
Yeah. So that's what I've been trying to do, is try to do it on our own at the staff level, and then we just simply follow up. What I have found is that in most cases, usually the review comments are very straightforward, that we just can simply send it to you in letter form. We'll give you exact locations, we'll give you photos if necessary, and it's usually something we don't have to stand on top of you, at least the couple that I've done it that way so far. But out of respect for the weather and seeing the contractor was so fully engaged this week, I didn't want to ask anyone to have to go out there and walk around in the rain. We'll kick that off next week.
All right. Anything else?
Yeah.
All right, thanks, guys, appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Doug,
gentlemen.
thanks, Ursula.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, moving down the line, we have the next five are utility reviews. The first one is UR 1908, AT&T, request to install 13 poles. Guys, you want to come up?
All right, very good.
Thank you.
And don't we think, well, we've got this pretty much vetted all out, don't we?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've moved all our locations.
Yeah.
Just based on Mike's feedback.
Yeah, and Mike's on vacation with his kids. He's at Disney World actually right now.
So
He's
we're in a better
getting
place than
pictures
we
and
are.
videos from him, so he's having a good time.
He sure is, but any comments y'all have, I'll be happy to take down and relay to him.
And Mike had briefed us on this also, that you guys have found co-location opportunities. I think you met with Mike and.
Yeah, we met. We've got some good co-location utilities. The only question I had that I hadn't figured out before, but we are going to meter them.
Right.
So they're going to be metered services. I think that was the last outstanding between you and I.
Right.
So I think we're satisfied. I hope you guys are with the outcome of that. So I don't think we have any other comments or questions unless you guys have anything.
No, it's easy.
Yeah. Well, Mike did a good job vetting it the first time. I appreciate you guys working with us on that. I think it worked out very well, and I think we're very happy, and I hope you guys are with the locations, and I hope you can provide the service you guys are looking for. But other than that, I don't have anything with that.
Mike worked very, very hard on that. He spent an enormous amount of time, so he's commended for his efforts.
So.
He's been great to work with.
Yeah.
He said y'all were great to work with as well.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I guess it'll be going to the planning commission, and we'll go from there.
All right.
All right. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Thanks for your cooperation.
Yeah, thanks, gentlemen.
And I don't know why he always puts utilities on the end of this. It's unfair. We should do those first.
I do it.
You do it?
Yeah, come on up. All right, so let's go down to 1909. This is
That's not us.
it's MediaCom. You got MediaCom. Oh, okay.
Denied. Okay.
I didn't know I couldn't show up in these.
Anything on MediaCom?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this is fairly standard.
Pretty straightforward.
Fairly standard bore-in conduit for future service.
So the next three, we'll go do them together, is the fiber optic cable. I have a comment from Eric. He had to leave. He just said he wants to make sure we do the pre-construction meeting before we start. So
Okay.
that's the comment
fine.
from Eric.
Sure.
If you have any more comments?
No, that's the same thing, and that was a procedure that Wade and Emily and I put together about 18 months ago, where we established a common point of contact with the contractor, so citizens could call the contractor and speak to them directly, and then so via AT&T, the contractor would go into the neighborhoods, have door hangers, made certain that in some places put up signage off the right-of-way in common areas, and when the major upgrade was going through Rock Creek, I think we had one call that came to the city.
And we're in Quail Creek, hot and heavy right now, so
Yeah.
I hadn't received much
I hadn't heard any
feedback. I've talked with the HOA a couple of times, but.
Yeah,
I don't think I have any feedback on that.
My favorite story, I think it was Southern Light did a run down there. Maybe y'all.
To the clubhouse, they went to the clubhouse, yeah.
And they dug a bore pit, and it was dead center between two of the oak trees. Of course, the call came in, they're cutting the trees down.
Yeah.
No, they dug a hole.
Well,
They dug a hole in the bore pit,
and I guess maybe a minor modification to the way we handle subdivisions. These three projects are all just a linear feeder relief project. Probably no HOAs in these three particular areas. But again, we'll be happy to door hanger, residences that we're passing, and if we need to put up some temporary work.
One of our standard procedures, I think we'd like to continue that. If that's worked well.
It
for
works
us.
well.
Yeah,
And
it
also,
does.
if you can let us know before you start, when you're actually going to start, then we can put that out on Everbridge for that
Okay. We
designated area.
they typically notify the building department. That's our standard, 48 hours prior to when they call locates in, they should be notifying in this case, the building department, that we're going to start it with the permit. So,
Any questions from anybody here?
did you have a chance to look at the one on Church Street, St. James?
You and I talked about it.
Well, that's coming. This is going to be the feeder for that.
Okay.
So I talked with Richard Peterson. They've got the sewer issue going on Church Street, which we've been working with them to where they have to cross some ducts. This project is coming out of some existing structure on Fells at Church.
Okay.
Down in front of the K1 property.
Okay.
Which will be in the sidewalk area in the right of way there, and then turning, coming down St. James. I've got one drainage pipe on St. James that we need to cross, and then place a small cabinet on the side of those apartments there, which are actually at 19 Summit Street.
Okay.
But there's one drain pipe running down St. James on the south side of St. James, on the K1 side that the way I showed it, we got to cut a little bit of asphalt to bore the road. There's a dumpster retaining area that was part of the K1 Center where we're proposing that bore across. And I showed it with us hand trench, opening up a hand trench there and going on top of that culvert to try to keep from forcing it deep.
Yeah.
So if you want to look at that and let me know if we need to change that, we can.
No, I'm okay
But-
with that. I
Okay.
mean,
It makes more sense than trying to force it deep and get back up real quick.
As long as we're doing handwork to get it, so we don't cut
Right.
through anything.
Right.
So, okay, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Anything else? And Wade's always been great to work with. We appreciate your cooperation as well. Great to work with.
And we're hopefully making progress. Eric and I are gonna be interviewing on Monday for a right-of-way inspector. So hopefully we're gonna have a person that, is gonna be.
The point man.
Be out there in the field with you guys and also helping review permits and assisting these guys and just, we're excited about that. so.
Are they going to be handling the right-of-way permitting process?
Yes.
Pretty much as well?
Yeah,
Okay,
I mean,
take it off there.
technically, they will be employed by the building department, since
Okay.
that is our portal for permitting.
Okay.
But they will work in conjunction with me for engineering review and then help assist them getting the permits issued and then follow through the life cycle. I mean, I'd love.
When
to
it's
get to the point
done,
where we
restore, all that
close
stuff.
out permits, so we can say, you are done, you're released, thank you very
Right.
much,
Okay.
so.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, thank you guys, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we've got a meeting.
What time are we in there?
10:45.